with danger and with daring rights. To the hilt we take you there, where courage meets a throat.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into the weeds on the life of Francis Doran. He's often called, the last of the great circus sideshow sword swallowers.
Yeah, it's a heck of a story. And we've dug into some great material for this, primarily the book To the Hilt, A Sword Swallower's History of Sword Swallowing, plus info from the Sword Swallowers Association International Hall of Fame site.
Good stuff. So listeners can definitely check those out if they want more detail after this.
Absolutely. Highly recommended. Doran's career was, long and varied. We're talking early 1940s, right up until he passed away in 79.
And he worked with all the big names, right? Major circuses, sideshows.
Pretty much all of them at one point or another. So our plan today, our sort of mission, is to trace the key moments, the twists and turns in his life.
Uncover how he went from one thing to another.
Exactly. It's a story full of surprising changes and just this incredible dedication to a very unusual world, the world of sideshow entertainment.
Okay, let's jump in. He was born April 10th, 1908. But his start in sideshows in the early 40s, it wasn't sword swallowing, was it?
No, not at all. It's actually quite unexpected. He started out as a female impersonator.
Really?
Yeah, known as the original Maxine. And he also did a half-man, half-woman act, Max Maxine.
Wow. So totally different from where he ended up. It shows you the kind of versatility needed back then, I guess.
Definitely. Performers often had multiple acts, to keep working, draw different crowds. It was about survival as much as artistry sometimes.
And his mother, Ivy Doran, she was a big part of his early career.
Oh, absolutely central. She traveled with him constantly, took on all sorts of jobs on the shows.
Like what?
Palm reader, helping in the cookhouse, selling tickets, you name it. They were incredibly close. It really highlights that family dynamic you often found in those traveling shows.
And we have some records of his early movements, right, from Billboard magazine.
Yeah, those old issues are gold mines for tracking performers. We see him mentioned with Descartes' Sideshow early on. Then there's a mention of him working as a welder in 1943.
A welder. So he took a break from performing.
Seems like it. Maybe wartime work, maybe just a change of pace. But he was back by 45 with the Anderson Sideshow. And Ivy was there, too, managing the cookhouse.
Right, and then Bailey Brothers Sideshow left them in 46.
Joined Duke Del Rio's show the same year.
And then a really big season with Dailey Brothers Circus in 1947. He apparently called that his biggest season.
Yeah, Dailey Brothers was a major outfit then. Getting a spot with them was a sign you were moving up. And that's when he started wintering down in Aransas Pass, Texas.
Okay. And he kept moving around in the late 40s, too.
Yep. The Billboard trail continues. Charles Rourke's Sideshow in 48.
Back to Bailey Brothers again that year.
Looks like it. Then Robbins Brothers in 49, doing the half and half act.
And Dailey Brothers again in 1950 for their final season, working the Annex show.
Exactly. It really paints a picture of that nomadic life, constantly on the move, show to show, following the money, following the crowds.
Then comes Ward Hall.
Yep.
It seems like a key relationship.
Hugely important. In 1951, Ward Hall started his first ever sideshow. And who were the very first people to sign on?
Francis and Ivy.
Francis and Ivy. That tells you something about their standing and probably their connection with Hall even then.
What was Doran like at that point?
Well, he had this reputation as a really dynamic speaker, a great front talker, the guy outside the tent pulling people in.
Peeler.
Exactly. Apparently, he sometimes struggled a bit with his English, but it didn't matter. He was a massive draw, a big moneymaker.
Interesting. And he had some quirks, something about house trailers.
Huh? Yeah. The sources say he was constantly trading for new house trailers, just like changing them up, apparently.
Okay.
And he loved deep-sea fishing. That passion for fishing is actually what led him and Ivy to keep going back to Aransas Pass, Texas for the winters.
Right. You mentioned Aransas Pass earlier, so that became their base.
Further off-season home, yeah. But then things changed. Ivy got sick. Yeah, her health declined, and eventually she just couldn't handle the travel anymore.
So what did they do?
They actually settled down in Aransas Pass and opened a sporting goods store together. Makes sense with his love of fishing.
That must have been a huge shift from the road life.
Definitely a different pace. But even then, the showman wasn't entirely gone. In 1956, he ran his own sideshow for a bit, the Francis Doran Sideshow.
And was he still performing?
Yep. Still doing the Maxine act, even while running the show. The pull of performing was obviously still strong.
But then tragedy struck. His mother, Ivy, passed away in 1959.
Yes. And according to the accounts we have, it devastated him. absolutely sent him into a spiral.
How bad did it get?
The sources indicate he was incredibly despondent to the point of attempting suicide. It really shows how deep that bond was.
That's incredibly sad. But he pulled through.
Thankfully, yes. His priest apparently intervened, talked him around, and he ended up going back on the road with Warhol's show.
Okay, back with Hall, but not as Maxine this time.
No, he didn't want to do the drag act anymore. He started as a front talker again, but he wasn't happy just talking. He missed performing.
So what happened next? This is where the sword swallowing comes in, doesn't it?
This is the moment. He goes to Warhol and asks Hall to teach him how to swallow swords.
Just like that.
Pretty much. But here's the kicker. Wardhall had never actually swallowed swords himself.
Wait, what? Seriously? How could he teach him then?
Well, apparently Hall knew the theory, the technique, even if he hadn't performed it. So he agreed, but with one very strict rule.
Which was?
Absolutely no swallowing neon tubes, ever.
Why neon specifically?
Because another performer Hall knew had been badly injured doing just that the year before. A neon tube broke inside them, so Hall made Doran promise.
Wow. And there's that quote from Doran himself around that time. Something about teaching yourself being dangerous.
Yeah, from a 1959 poster. He who teaches himself the art of sword swallowing is a potential death, cocked and ready to happen. Pretty chilling, especially given what comes later.
Definitely foreshadowing. So Hall taught him the basics in 1960.
That's the account. Ward Hall gave him the fundamentals. And just like that, Francis Doran began this whole new chapter.
From the original Maxine to Francis Doran's sword swallower. Quite the transformation.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he took to it. He performed with Ward Hall's World of Wonders on and off through the 60s.
And other shows too.
Yeah. Places like Wallace Brothers Circus, Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers Circus in 66, 67. He built a solid reputation as a sword swallower.
Okay, so he's established in this new act. But then comes the incident.
Right. June 16th, 1969. Houston Astro Hall. He's performing with the biggest name of all, Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus.
And this is where he breaks the promise to Ward Hall.
This is it. He decides to swallow a 36-inch neon tube.
Oh, no.
And it goes wrong. Horribly wrong. It exploded inside him during the act.
Exploded in front of everyone.
Yes. Apparently there were over 200 people watching. Can you imagine?
That's horrifying. What did the report say happened?
Well, newspaper headlines were stark, like, neon tube explodes inside sword swallower from the Miami Herald. There's also an account from a guy named Charles Keeler who worked at the Astro Hall.
What did he say?
Keeler mentioned Doran seemed possibly inebriated and that he bent his body while the tube was down, causing it to shatter internally. He needed emergency surgery. It was touch and go.
Just awful. And Keeler also suggested this might not have been the first time something like this happened.
Yeah, he implied there might have been a previous, perhaps less severe incident, but this 1969 one was the big one, the near-fatal one that made the news.
Now, didn't Doran later make some claims about how long he'd been swallowing things? That seems to conflict with Ward Hall's timeline.
Right, in 1970, just a year after nearly dying, he apparently claimed he'd been swallowing neon for 20 years.
20 years. But Hall taught him in 1960.
Exactly. And Doran also claimed he'd been swallowing steel since he was 7. It stretches credulity a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, that sounds like some classic sideshow embellishment, maybe.
Could well be. Storytelling and maybe bending the truth a little was definitely part of that world. Build up the legend, you know?
True. But even after that horrific accident, he didn't stop performing entirely.
That's the amazing part. He did say afterwards he wouldn't swallow another fluorescent tube for like $100,000. He set that boundary.
I should hope so.
Right. But he went back to swallowing steel swords. Soon after recovering, he was working with Royal American shows.
Incredible resilience. Or maybe just what he knew.
Maybe a bit of both. He kept working through the 70s, back with Ward Hall's World of Wonders sometimes. Also Hoxie Brothers Circus, John Brashaw's 10 and 1. He was still out there.
Still part of the scene. But his health started to decline later in the 70s, didn't it? Possibly related to the accident?
Seems likely, yeah. And as he felt himself failing, he decided to pass the torch, so to speak.
How so?
He started training a young woman working on John Bradshaw's show. She was the 19-year-old Bali girl, Diane Falk.
The Bali girl, the one doing the outside talk or performance to draw people in?
That's her. He taught her sword swallowing. She later became known as Lady Diane.
Wow. He mentored her.
Yes. She spoke really fondly of him later, said he was a great friend, and she was just enamored by him. It shows he wanted the art to continue.
That's a nice touch to his later years. He passed away not long after that, though.
Yeah, October 18th, 1979. He was 71. The cause of death was listed as pneumonia, but it's widely believed it was a complication stemming from the damage done by that neon tube explosion 10 years earlier.
So the act that made him famous ultimately contributed to his death.
It seems that way, a very poignant end. He really was seen as the last of that old guard, the sword swallowers who worked the big top circuses in their heyday.
But his legacy didn't completely end with him.
No, definitely not. Training Lady Diane was huge. He even bequeathed his swords to her.
His actual sword.
His actual swords. And we also know another performer, Jimmy Rapp, learned using Doran's swords back in 1973. And there was Lady Sandra Reed, who worked alongside him and helped him out as his health faded.
So the knowledge got passed on.
It did. And it's fitting, too, that he was buried back in Aransas Pass, Texas.
With his mother, Ivy.
With his mother, Ivy,
Mm-hmm.
in Prairie View Cemetery, bringing that part of his life full circle.
And his story continues to be told. You mentioned the book To the Hilt.
That's right. He's going to be featured in the 2025 edition, To the Hilt, a sword swallower's history of sword swallowing. So his place in that history is really cemented.
Well, this has been quite the journey through an incredible life. From female impersonator to legendary, if perhaps ill-fated, sword swallower. Francis Doran's story is something else.
It really is. Just an amazing example of the lives lived in that unique world. And if folks want to learn more, definitely check out swordswallow.com.
Right, that's the Sword Swallowers Association international site with the Hall of Fame and the To the Hilt podcasts.
Exactly. Lots more stories there.
And, of course, the book itself, To the Hilt, A Sword Swallower's History of Sword Swallowing by Dan Meyer and Mark Hartzman.
Yeah.
Available pretty much everywhere books are sold.
Yep. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the usual spots. Or check the book's website, tothehiltbook.com or tothehilt.net. It covers over 100 swallowers.
Fantastic resources. You know, listening to all this, it really makes you think about the sheer dedication involved.
And the risk. Definitely the risk.
Yeah, and the transformations people go through for their art, even an art as dangerous and unusual as sword swallowing. Doran's life really captures the whole strange, captivating essence of the old-time sideshow, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. A world unlike any other.
With every breath, dancing close to life and death, stories written deep in flesh, legends born in every test. Through history's winding path, crafted with an iron grasp, voices from a world gone past, echo in the feet they clasp.